Have you ever heard of the scary crypts of Paris, filled with ghosts and the dead? A forbidden place full of terrifying secrets. Claude Lafayette, an ambitious documentary filmmaker and a lover of the unknown, was always in search of a unique project that would immortalize his name in the world of filmmaking. For years, he had conducted extensive research, hoping to find a mysterious and extraordinary location. However, nothing captivated him quite like the catacombs of Paris. This dark and intricate network of tunnels and underground crypts, filled with the remains of the dead for centuries, had always been regarded as forbidden and teeming with terrifying secrets. Legends about lost spirits, strange sounds, and unknown entities lurking in its depths were whispered across Paris. But to Claude, these were merely stories waiting to be uncovered. He decided to venture into the catacombs to uncover the secrets buried in their darkest corners. His friends, Jules, Sophie, and Mark joined this perilous journey with hesitation and anxiety. Each of them had their own reasons to fear entering such a place. Jules had heard tales of ghosts and bizarre creatures in the catacombs since childhood and had always avoided the place with terror. Sophie, deeply claustrophobic, viewed being in an underground space as a living nightmare. Even Mark, with all his courage, found himself questioning whether this was the right decision. On the night they entered the catacombs, as the group reached the point where the main entrance came into view, an area and chilling sensation overcame them. Paris, shrouded in the depths of night, was steeped in a deadly silence. The dim street lights cast a cold and mysterious glow on the asphalt, failing to illuminate the gaping void that opened up in the night. When they arrived at the forgotten iron gate that had been untouched for years, an overwhelming sense of dread settled in their hearts. Upon entering the tunnels, the heavy, cold air was immediately palpable. The stone walls around them were coated in a layer of moisture, and as the flashlights illuminated the way forward, eerie shadows danced on the walls. There was no sound except for the echo of their footsteps. As they ventured further, the tunnel seemed endless. The dark and constricted space brought them closer together with every step, as if something deep within was questioning them and planting terrifying doubts in their minds. Each member of the group exchanged anxious glances. Apart from the sound of their heavy breathing, nothing could break the oppressive atmosphere of the place. This was not a place where anyone could ever feel at ease. The tunnels twisted and interconnected in bewildering patterns, and none of them could discern which path led where. The stone walls gleamed strangely, and the deeper they went into the labyrinth, the stronger the feeling that something or someone was watching them. The absolute silence amplified the sound of their heartbeats in their ears. Then, the first signs of what would entangle them in a journey of unrelenting horror began to emerge. Jules carried an old map of the catacombs, a map that, at first glance, seemed precise and detailed, but gradually doubts crept into the group's minds. The deeper they ventured into the tunnels, the more they realized that many of the paths did not match the map. It was as if the map belonged to another time, a time when some of these tunnels didn't even exist. Jules, who had initially examined the map with confidence, now looked around with increasing worry. His gestures, as he tried to find the correct route, seemed futile. The further they went, the farther they were from their destination, lost in endless, maze-like paths. The sound of their footsteps echoed through the damp, silent corridors like reverberations in an infinite canyon. Claude, ever absorbed in filming, continued his work even as the others looked around nervously. His camera kept rolling, capturing hazy images of the dark and mysterious surroundings. Yet, the camera revealed something their eyes could not see. Shadows darting swiftly at the edges of the tunnels, always staying one step ahead of them. Sophie, her gaze fixed forward, felt an overwhelming sense that something or someone was following them from a distance. She constantly glanced around, as if hearing the faint sound of unfamiliar footsteps trailing behind. Each time she looked back, there was nothing there, but a gnawing sense of dread settled within her. Every shadow cast on these stone walls made her heart race. Amid the twists and turns of the labyrinth, the group stumbled upon a small chamber whose walls were adorned with ancient cryptic inscriptions. There inside the chamber felt colder and heavier than anywhere else. Breath caught in their throats, and every moment sent eerie echoes through the space. If you dare to listen to this story to the end, like the video and stay with us. Mark, visibly distressed and frightened, Kay stepped back and said, "I feel like something is moving here." He glanced at Jules and added, "This map is wrong. There's something here with us." At that moment, a wild and eerie sound echoed from the distance. A sound none of them could describe. It resembled a slow, crawling noise emanating from deep within the walls. It was like a chilling whisper that no human ear was meant to hear. They all froze, their gazes locking, with only the sound of their rapid, relentless breathing intensifying the oppressive fear in the air. Sophie, her hands trembling, aimed her flashlight forward, but its weak beam could not pierce through the dense shadows. All that remained was the overwhelming sensation of an unseen, menacing force that had seemingly been lurking in the darkness all along. The group, following an unreliable map, moved forward with shaky steps into the dark, winding tunnels. As Claude directed his camera toward another shadowy corner, he spotted a stone archway. This ancient doorway, weathered and transformed by time and moisture, stood eerily distinct amid the endless tunnels. Just above the gate, inscriptions in Latin were deeply etched into the stone with sharp, deliberate lines drawn to it. Claude brought the camera closer to capture the next more clearly. The carved words glimmered faintly in the darkness, enigmatic and foreboding. "This gateway marks the beginning of nightmares. Step forth and pay the price." A deathly silence enveloped the group. Jules studied the inscriptions intently, his eyes straining to decipher their meaning. But the more he tried, the more his mind seemed to unravel. Mark, always wary of potential dangers, spoke in a trembling voice. This isn't what we were looking for. We shouldn't be here. This gate is dangerous. But Claude, his face filled with excitement and completely ignoring Mark's warnings, stepped forward. He seemed to harbor no fear of this mysterious place. In fact, the deeper he ventured into the darkness, the more alive he felt. To him, this was the very place he had always sought, an endless labyrinth of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Sophie, clutching her hands tightly and breathing rapidly, struggled to withstand the oppressive heavings that hung in the air. She had joined this journey solely for Claude and her interest in documentary filmmaking, but now she felt as though she had trapped herself in an endless nightmare. The further they advanced, the colder it became. The icy air cut through her lungs like a sharp blade, making its breath more laborious. Even their flashlights, casting faint beams of light ahead, seemed utterly powerless against the impenetrable darkness. But more unnerving than anything else was the silence. Their footsteps left no echo in these deadly tunnels. In most enclosed spaces, every step produces reverberations, but here there was nothing. It was as if the air itself had been imprisoned, muffling every sound and making each movement feeling stifling. Even breathing became a struggle, with a crashing weight pressing against their chests that only grew heavier with each step. The eerie atmosphere unsettled even the bravest among them. They felt as though something was waiting for them in the shadows, indistinct forms that seemed to dance along the tunnel walls, always one step ahead. Claude, still consumed by the thrill of discovery, suddenly noticed that they were approaching another bend. Yet, deep down, he couldn't completely ignore the growing unease within him. Something inside him screamed that this might be a terrible mistake. Sophie, her eyes wide with fear and her heart pounding, stared straight ahead. Nothing could quell the terror rising within her. She felt as though she could no longer breathe. Not just because of the cold, heavy air, but also because of the sinister presence she was certain was stalking them. Then, out of nowhere, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed from afar. The group froze in place, their ears straining to locate the source of the noise, but no one could identify where it was coming from. The group's eyes were locked on one another. As they moved forward, each of them could feel that in these endless tunnels, there was no turning back. With every step they took, they drew closer to heart of darkness and their own nightmares. At that moment, an iron gate appeared before them, an ancient gate coated with rust and coated in dust. The key to passing through this gate was nothing but fear and anxiety. Only one question remained. Should they continue? What kind of world do you think awaits them behind that iron gate? To get to this point, please stay with us until the end of the story. The group pressed on through the cold, endless tunnels. Each step forward plunged them deeper into the void of darkness. After a while, the cold, heavy air of the tunnel pressed relentlessly against their chests. Everything around them felt silent and lifeless, yet inexplicably there was something strange lingering in the air. At first, Sophie didn't pay attention, but when an incomprehensible whisper echoed faintly from a distant corner, she felt as though something in the shadows was drawing closer to her. The faint murmur reached her ears, and a moment later, it sounded as if her name was being called from afar. At first, she tried to dismiss it, but something deep inside her screamed that this couldn't be just her imagination. Her heart pounded furiously, and her breath became heavier. "Did you hear that? Someone called your name." Sophie's voice trembled, filled with terror. She looked at Claude, her eyes desperate for confirmation or denial of this horror. Claude was always enjoyed the thrill of seeking the unknown. Initially responded with a carefree laugh. "It's probably just your imagination. This place is full of strange noises." However, the murmurs continued, this time louder and clearer than before. The indistinct sound that reached their ears seemed like someone was calling her name over and over in the darkness, with each call accompanied by the sensation that unseen footsteps were following it. Sophie, now unable to bear it any longer, looked at Jules with a violent shiver. Jules, who had seemed slightly worried from the beginning, suddenly said, "I heard that noise too. I don't know what it was, but it was a terrifying sound." They all stopped. The silence now felt heavier and darker than ever. The only sound they could hear was their own rapid breathing, which was swallowed up by the terrifying space around them. Then Claude turned on the camera, hoping to capture images of this eerie place. Its weak light only illuminated the empty, soulless tunnel. Something seemed to be moving in the dark space, but there was nothing tangible for their eyes to grasp. At that moment, the sound of slow, creaking footsteps echoed from afar. Something within the tunnel was drawing closer to them, but no one could see it. The relentless sound, as though it came from the walls and ceiling of the tunnels, intensified the sense of an indescribable force present in the air. Their breath was caught in their chests, and an eerie cold unease ran through their bodies. Sophie, trembling with fear, finally screamed, "I can't stay here anymore! Let's go back! There are things here we shouldn't know!" But Jules quickly replied, "Don't worry, maybe there is more to this than just these noises. We need to move forward to understand." Claude, his eyes burning with excitement, said, "This is exactly what I've been looking for. This is something no one has been. We have to keep going." As they moved forward, step by step, the whispers grew louder, and inexplicably everything around them became darker. But in the midst of this darkness, every footstep, every shadow, every movement in their minds turned into a more serious and terrifying threat. Claude, captivated by the whispers, suddenly broke away from the group. Without telling anyone, he followed the sound. His camera was recording images no one else could see, shadows creeping along the walls. But when he turned around, there was nothing. When his friends realized he was missing, they panicked and began searching for him. Claude and his group reached the deepest and most abandoned parts of the catacombs. They had been wandering for hours in the endless, mysterious tunnels, and with every step they took, it felt as though the depths of the darkness was closing in on them more than ever before. Then they arrived at a room where, in the center, an area altar of bones was arranged. The bones were not neatly placed, but unnaturally tangled and piled in a terrifying manner. At that moment, an indescribable presence filled the air. These bones seemed not merely the result of natural death, but appeared to have absorbed some kind of dark, spatial energy. In the center of the room stood a creature that, even from a distance, filled every part of Claude's being with dread. It was a tall, thin shadow standing in front of the weak flashlight beams. It was neither fully human nor anything else, just a mass of vague, dark lines that all inhabited that space. Its eyes, white and lifeless, shone brighter than anything else around them. When Claude's gaze locked onto those eyes, he felt as though something inside him was disintegrating. The stare seemed to deeply pierce his soul, as if it contained all the secrets of human fear and pain. It was as if this creature didn't just see him, but had read all of his past, his mistakes, and his hidden fears. Claude's whole body began to tremble. He struggled to raise his camera, but his hands shook uncontrollably. After a few seconds of staring at the creature, it suddenly moved violently. Its body darted forward like a fleeting shadow, silent in the air. Anything that came into contact with it was crushed with a horrifying, dry sound. Claude screamed in terror, but no sound came out of his mouth. Time seemed to slow down strangely, and all that could be heard was the shaking of the camera in Claude's hands. Suddenly, the shadowy creature screamed, a sound unlike any human scream. It was more like a non-human shriek, emanating from the depth of hell, a noise capable of terrifying and annihilating any living being. The sound echoed in Claude's ears, consumed his mind, and he felt as though his brain was about to explode. At that moment, the camera slipped from his hands, and the footage abruptly cut off. What happened after the video cut out? None of the group members could remember. Everything vanished into darkness, and the only thing that remained was a deathly silence that ruled over the catacombs. When Claude disappeared, his family formed a team consisting of a historian, Elizabeth, a psychologist, Dr. Renaud, and a professional explorer, Lucas. This group entered the catacombs with professional equipment to search for Claude. Along the way, Elizabeth discovered an inscription that spoke of a forbidden ritual in the catacombs. In this ritual, the spirits of the dead were transferred to the realm of shadows, but an error occurred during the ceremony, leaving a gateway open between the two worlds. The group reached the point where the only way to save Claude was to sacrifice one of them. This decision placed immense psychological pressure on the group. Ultimately, Locke chose to sacrifice himself so that the others could save Claude. Claude, whose spirit seemed to have been possessed, returned to the group, but his eyes were vacant and his behavior was strange. Had he truly returned, or was it only his body that had come back to the world? Let us know what you think in the comments. When the group exited the catacombs, Mark noticed the shadow standing at a distance watching them. Had the catacombs realized them, or was this just the beginning of a new nightmare?